So, dudes, we'll get the guys in here. We'll see how quickly we can get this up and running. Hey,
Yo, what's up?
Hey, what's up,
what's up,
Chris?
guys? I got an invite sent out to Matt. Get him in here just a second. In theory, how are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Good. I think this is going to be a good talk, good conversation.
Yeah, I'm interested myself.
All right, Matt, I'm sending you an invite.
Sounds good.
There he is. Accept. Figures. Matt's the one that screws it up. Everybody else on time knows how the buttons work. We got Matt farting around with. Matt, I sent you another invite just to accept that if you can see it show up. Do you guys, before I get going on it, do you guys, oh, it says he's unable to join. Well, we might start without you. Keep trying. Send me another request and I'll add you in, Matt. Do you guys have any issues with me posting this after we're done?
No.
Okay. So I wanted to start it out. I made some posts at the beginning of the week, and I think the most important part to me is that guys actually understand what they're asking for when they say we need a DM program. Cool. And I want to hit, like, I got a bunch of topics like question wise, and I think we can go through and kind of label them and maybe give them a way to explain this so they can get an advancement or get something going on in their curriculum or in their departments that's going to give them an advantage. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
So there he is. What's up, dude?
Sorry.
No worries.
I don't
Let's do
see
it.
it.
We'll go around the horn. I don't know how you guys are set up on your phone, but I'm up here. I'm Chris, so I'll be asking some questions, hosting it. And if we want to go around, if you guys just want to introduce yourselves, however deep you feel like doing it, let's do that.
I think I'm on top, so I'll go next.
Go for it.
Matt, work in Arizona, cop 13 years, 7 years on our full-time team here, primary sniper, precision rifle instructor, all that other fancy paperwork, practical shooter, 3-gun, USPSA, stuff like that.
Eric, you want to hit it?
Yeah, I'm Eric. I've been copping for 20 years, full-time and teaching for 8 at our department. I've worked for 2 departments, one of about 100, 150 people, and one of about 1,800 people. So I've seen the 2 extremes, and I think that kind of lends some perspective to kind of this DM and where it can fit and what departments can benefit from something like this.
Okay.
Yeah, USPSA teach a lot of patrol rifle LPVO stuff. So I've seen a lot of the LPVO patrol end of it and have some insight there.
Cool.
Same
Oh, man.
background as those guys. 10 years as a cop, 9 on part-time SWAT team. Couple cool T-shirts from the military. Same.
Cool. So my background in long gun is just competitive, and then carrying one is like an assaulter basically on a SWAT team. No sniper experience, but competitive and long range. So I want to start it out with a question. And I think it's going to help us understand. And like my main goal of this, like I said, Matt, before you got back in, was helping guys understand what they're actually asking for, and then maybe ways to go about asking for it and explaining it better than just we need a designated marksman program with scopes and this and that. Because the people who have the correct questions aren't going to get the right answers, and it's going to be a hard no. So my first one is starting out where the term comes from. If you guys want to give your 2 cents on it, what is a military squad designated marksman? What is the purpose of that?
So I was that for the first couple months on my Marshall deployment, and then they took it away. So yeah, it was precision fire, like observation and precision fire, and that was the main goal. So
Not a solo send you off into the bushes, right? But just that
no,
extra edge for the squad or the platoon.
yeah, primarily a lot of it was observation. On the sniper side of it, like concealment, like being able to burn through that concealment. And I know like 10 power is enough, like 100 or 200 yards away. I can see through the bushes, see through the trees, and see people moving. I'm like, hey, they're over here. Because when you take round, the first thing is where the hell is it coming from? And anyone that's experienced it, like, well, that's what we first need is observation. The second was precision to be able to precisely put rounds on target. Um, so that was my first thing on my list was precision versus observation.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's our issue?
And
Which
then
is
I have a
both.
question that's going to go along with that.
Yeah.
Right, Eric? Any thoughts on that? Like military wise, were any of
Yeah.
neither of you guys were military DMs?
Yeah, that's out of my lane. I'll
Okay,
I'll bow out from that technical
but
side of it.
can we agree, and I think most people watching can agree, that the term designated marksman, as it's viewed in LE, Instagram, Mill, in the civilian world, comes from the military, the actual squad designated marksman, and the reasons why it was built, kind of to extend that range of the rifle squad with a little more precision fire out past 300 and much more precision inside of that, and the ability to observe as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I would modify it a little bit for
But we're
domestic
not
use.
there
I
yet.
think that when okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're just looking at the where did
yeah,
it come from in the mill side of it, right?
yeah.
So my next one is
Hey,
what
Chris,
is an
one
LE?
sec on the military thing, real quick. What
Yep.
was just like your guys' responsible like distance that you would shoot out to and stuff like that? Just I wasn't in the military either, so way outside of my lane for that type of stuff. But did you guys have like a certain distance that you would engage out to, or what were kind of some like lines that you guys existed in when you were doing that stuff?
I mean, you can hit 800, but looking at the capability of the weapon system, the DM rifle was 5.56, 2.23. Anything past 200 or 300, your velocity is dropping off. So I mean, you're not getting incapacitation hits. So like 300, 400, even 500, like you're putting rounds on target, but that doesn't. That was our biggest complaint was we weren't putting guys down. Um, so when we're talking precision shots, we're not talking like the sniper, eye shot and the guy dropping. Like we're talking precision shots, like we're putting some rounds on that person's body, making them move, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think a little bit of that's lost in the LE
Yeah,
world, and I think in the Instagram world, of what the abilities and the purpose
yeah.
actually are, right? So
And so one final thing, so when I was looking online, I was like, what are these companies teaching? What are they calling a designated marksman for LE? And I look, and a lot of the course descriptions were surgical fire out to 500, precision fire out to 500. The only course that I found, which I haven't taken, which I'm interested in now, is Ridgeline Defense. They had the only accurate and like expectations versus reality like course description,
yeah,
like with percentage shots hits and stuff like that. And
and
I was
also
like,
the guys over at Ridgeline do I think a very good job of presenting what the capabilities are, and then we're going to get into some stuff that I think specific to LE is missing, right? Reality based, right?
mm-hmm.
So my next question is, what is an LE designated marksman? So we figured out where it came from, the mill. What do you, because when they go, I need a DM program, you're asking a chief or you're asking an assistant chief, you're asking someone, depending on the size of your department, to invest time and money. So you need answers to the questions that are going to come up. What does that look like? What are you going to be? You need more snipers. And there's some simple in-house answers that I know they're going to look to. But if you don't have a solution for or a reason why that wouldn't be beneficial, they're going to default to them and tell you no. So let's go around, like, what do you think an LEDM actually is? How would you define it? Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, so I went to the Ridgeline LEDM program development course. And I would modify kind of what they're doing a little bit for actual like department use. Um, a couple of things that I would hit are you're reducing liability. That would be the first thing out of my mouth if I were trying to sell a program. So we're reducing liability because of dirty backgrounds. We're increasing hit percentages, um, in particular at partial targets, at concealed targets, and in targets that have dirty
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds. So in a crowded environment, we are reducing liability. And so when we talk about like the beyond 300 yard, for most agencies, when they start thinking of DM stuff, they should be thinking beyond 50 yards. Like I've seen patrol cops and I've seen patrol cops with patrol rifles. And anything for a lot of guys, anything beyond 75 yards is precision rifle territory.
Yeah, we're going to get into something where distance becomes a factor and reality becomes a factor. I got some questions I want to ask you guys on that. But Matt, like, how would you define, if you guys invented a DM program, what would be the expectations of it, and how would you define it right off the bat?
Kind of like what he was saying. I don't know equipment wise if it would look any different than what we already have. Maybe just the optic, the scope would be a little bit different, something magnified, 1:6, 1:8, 1:10, whatever it is. For me, the training is going to be a lot heavier on that side of it. Getting those guys to understand like what the tool's used for, when would they use it, and understanding a lot of the things like he was saying. Urban environment where I work at, it's not as simple as shooting on the range. There's always a lot of factors going on. So it would be giving guys more training with it, would be the understanding of it. And, you know, most of the guys that have done like law enforcement sniper stuff, like the ASA tells us, I think it was last year, it was 51 yards is the average shot for a police sniper for that. And there's obviously stuff on the short side and stuff that's really far away as well. Most of our shootings at our department with rifles, 25 yards and in. There's a couple of outliers here and there sometimes, but the majority of them are traffic stops, surrounding calling houses, or specialty units that are using different tactics where they're up close when they're getting in rifle engagements. So it would be looking at 50 yards, 100 yards, going around my city and looking at what 100 yards actually looks like in some of our areas. It's a very difficult shot. It's not pretty. There's cars going by. There's people walking by. If you don't have elevation, it's almost a no-go unless you really have stuff cleared out, So that would kind of be what the program looks like. I go back and forth on if the equipment would look different, if it would be a different gun with a different round. I don't know if we're going to get into calibers at all,
Maybe
or if we're just sticking with 5.56. Yeah, I don't want to divert off of it because I want to send it to him to answer it. So very similar to what he was saying. And I think, like I said, the equipment would look very similar except for just what's on the gun optics-wise.
Yeah. So I would look at the course descriptions, and I'll tell you what it's not. It's not sticking an LPVO on a $400 department-issued rifle. Need something a little bit more, and especially a lot more on the training side. I think there is a need to bridge the gap between patrol and SWAT, right? But SWAT, like special weapons and tactics, like special weapons. Okay, LPVO is becoming like a big deal now, and why? But I don't know if guys have the training behind it, and I know the other two guys here, like, they realize that. I can just hear how they're talking. They're like 75 yards is like, I'm like, yeah, it is. Watching these patrol guys shoot, like, I mean, these courses are teaching out the 500, like, dude, no shot. Like, stop.
So that'll get into, unless you guys have anything to add, we'll get into the next kind of topic.
Nope.
I'll give you my 2 cents on it. I follow a similar thing. The way I look at it is, and I have this question later, but this is how I would define it. We need to do a better job in law enforcement, not of having designated marksmen, but we need to do a better job of designating the actual marksmen that are going to engage if something happens. So I can have one guy cover something versus all 10 people out front shooting their guns. Like, you're not shooting. This is the designated shooter. And we've been doing that forever. I think your guys' agencies would do the same thing, where you try to limit the amount of deadly force being applied to 1 or 2 individuals who have the best tool to do that job, right? So if a rifle you got a guy with a shotgun and a pistol out front and a rifle shows up, you two can go do something else, support, do whatever, but this rifle can cover it and should be able to. And we'll get into that with like what actual training standards are met. So the next one I have is, what training is needed to start and maintain one, funding versus time, right? So I actually do a lot of thinking before I do these things, and I try to have answers in my head, but I think it's good for people to think about it. Saying you want something without giving people how you're going to do it how you're going to fund it, and how it's going to be upkept, ongoing, how you're going to make this last past the first class and actually be something institutional and something cultural that everyone understands, that wants something with that. If you need the title, if one is out there and you need that title, once they're deployed, do we understand that everyone else needs to have the maturity to allow that individual to have to take care of it? So we're really trying to get people to think like a SWAT team, right? Once our snipers were up on the roof, or once they're under a car, once they were wherever they at and they cleared and said, I have the front of the house, we were done staring at it and looking at it. That's their job now, right? We can peek and start looking at other stuff we're going to do, but we weren't pointing guns at it, freaked out, because we knew that they were up on glass watching us. So what do you guys would see that would be needed for training and upkeep? How can, if you were to make, each of you were to make a DM program, what training time investment would you need in an individual? And then what standards would they have to upkeep? How often? Quarterly, monthly, yearly, biannual, whatever. And I'm going to go to you, Eric, first, because you're up here on the right, and I'm going to go around my screen.
All right. I would say program development, I would make sure that you want to talk about equipment yet, or this is just the program,
just the
kind of
program,
expectations for
like
the people?
We'll get to the rifles that we would need, or the caliber and all that in a minute, but like what time-wise, what do you need to get someone up to speed?
Time-wise, I would say like you need to put those guys on what's typically like, at least here in Texas, typical part-time teams are like 16 hours a month, I think is what TTPOA recognizes. 2 days a month. I would treat it like a local small agency part-time team, because essentially they're taking the role of local small agency part-time sniper. Like that's the role that they're taking, where that role isn't filled yet. So I'd be talking about 2 days a month, with the expectation that every round that's fired is duty ammo, right? So like that's part of the equation, that when you sell it, you got to understand every time I press the trigger on this gun, it's going to cost $1.10. You know, it's going to cost me $11 to verify zero before I start training. So I'd be looking at all duty ammo, 2 days a month. And then I would also make a requirement in there that training time be flexible, because there are times when things happen like, hey, we need to be gathering data in the conditions today. Like they might not happen on the second Thursday, but today, right now, my patrol sergeant's got to let me get off the road and go to the range for 4 hours. And then having access to the facility that you need would be a big thing that many agencies, that's a hurdle that they can't cross.
Mm-hmm.
So your 50-yard range is not going to cut it anymore.
Matt?
Currently, our program's set up. It's quarterly training. So 1 or 2 of those quarterly trainings is qual and standards that they have to do. So that's administrative stuff, but unfortunately it occupies a training spot every quarter that they have to do that. The other trainings that they have in there, they find whatever topics they want to work on and set up, and that's what they train. Quarterly, you know, if whatever person you're going to have into this program and what standards you're going to set, you know, we have to have a discussion with them about, are you just going to come to quarterly training just so you can have it, or is this something you're going to practice with on your own? Because if I'm in charge of that program and I'm only seeing you, let's say I could get them for once every quarter. So they go to regular patrol rifle quarterly, but then they also come and see me for DM training once a quarter. There's a lot of time in between there that they might not ever touch the gun outside of patrol rifle training if it's the same gun, or they're not going and practicing on their own. We're fortunate in that we have a good facility. We have a 200-yard range at our place and a 100-yard range. And so when the facilities are there, we can shoot at nighttime, which would be another thing that probably would be a requirement in there. We got to shoot in diminished light or at nighttime at some point during the year so that guys can get training with doing that, understand the capabilities of the equipment and what they need to do. So duty ammo would probably go along the same lines. I know right now we have duty ammo, but they have another practice ammo that's pretty close, but that can be debatable, right? Of whatever standard you want the gun to have. So probably going to be a cost there if we want to run duty ammo. So that's going to have to be documented on there. How are we going to pay for that? We got to buy more duty ammo. And then when the world goes goes sideways here as the election comes up, what happens when we can't get duty ammo? You know, that'll be a bridge that we'll have to cross with the program. Was the other part of it? So just the program
Yeah, just
outline and training
like
requirements and
what
everything.
time wise, what would you need to actually get one of these stood up? How would you go about selecting the people? Most likely directly from patrol rifle. Your higher performers would probably be your best bet. But then again, that's what we're looking at people understanding is you don't just have a DM program. Like it needs to be fed, and it needs to be something that can go ongoing. Because if you leave and it just falls apart, it was just a waste of time.
Right.
Right. So it needs to be maintained. What does the maintenance look like? And it's not cheap.
No, it's
Depending on
not.
the size of your agency and depending on the amount of individuals you have involved in it. And that's another point we'll get to here right afterwards, but it is not cheap. What do you got, sir?
As far as the training goes, I agree, 16 hours. The gear, I already saw someone that popped up in the comments like, well, gear's the cheapest part of this, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, it's not. Like, especially when we're talking $1.15 a round for freaking Hornady tap ammo. Like, you got the glass. I mean, we're not talking about grabbing a $300 Strike Eagle and slapping it onto a freaking duty rifle. Like, we're talking accurized AR, like, and a true 1 minute gun. Our state requires quarterly quals with the rifle. Well, it's 2 quals and then a familiarization fires, but basically quarterly quals. I agree with that. I would actually even push it up a notch. We qual every other training for our scoped rifles. Now, our state, they have a scoped rifle qual for basically our snipers. There's been that argument. It's like, well, when you put an LPVO on it, is it a scoped rifle or is it an AR? Like, which one is it? I know for me, like, I've tried to shoot the scoped rifle course, which is 2 minute of angle targets with a triangle in the center. It can't be done. My gun's a 2 minute gun. It's not going to happen unless I get to spend my money on my barrel and my ammo. It's not going to be done. And trying to get administration to realize that, they're like, well, you have a bolt gun. Like, yeah, well, that's true. So scratch that. You know, that program's out.
So the way you guys described it is kind of what I wrote down in my notes, and I think that's what brings it to when people really start to understand. Right, there's the initial investment, then there's the time. And the time for someone the way I'm looking at it is if we're singling them out as a sniper light / ability to observe, ability to do all these things, that's a lot of training that isn't shooting also. Hide site selection, how do you communicate? What are you responsible to communicate? How do you get into that position? How do you identify yourself to the homeowner? The stuff that normal snipers would learn, right, Matt? Like, I'm going 2 houses away, I'm gonna go in their backyard. I probably need to contact these people before I put a ladder on their roof and just start crawling around with guns in their backyard. So somebody doesn't come out with a gun, like, who the fuck are you? Like, all of this extra stuff that gets put into it is where I think command staff's going to ask questions and say, well, we already have snipers, right? Why can't your patrol officers just do these things in the beginning? And I think a lot of it comes down to distance, because everybody starts to look past 300, right? That's where I hear most people like, oh, out past 300, that's when I'm going to need this. And I'll absolutely give you scenarios where those are reasonable shots. 500, 600. I can give you easy scenarios we'll all agree on. Yes, you could shoot a guy at 600. In the continental United States, a police officer could do that and it would make sense. But just the precision up close, that goes to what do you actually expect them to be able to do? Are you expecting your DMs, if you had this program, are you expecting them to take a partial exposed hostage headshot past an innocent, right? Is that the expectation? And do you have that expectation of your patrol officers as well? Or is there a hard no? Or is there a distance at which a patrol officer is not allowed to engage? Because if there isn't, then they can shoot on to infinity. Because I know there's no law that says force ends at a certain distance, right?
Yeah.
If force is authorized.
With that distance, I guess in our state and coming through the sniper program on our side, we've always had like the bolt gun with the Leopold Mark IV. It's 10 power, maybe a 14 power here and there. And it's always been like, what can you actually identify? Like, if I hold a 3x5 index card in front of my face, what can you identify? And it's always been 200 yards. So it's like even the snipers, outside of federal guys, like the CAT teams and stuff like that, like most snipers across the nation, like, yeah, sure, we train out all the way to 800. I got data out to 1200 on my gun, but we're training within 200, most of us. So when we're looking at this DM thing, sure, we can qualify and we can get guys and get data and put data on the guns and have all the gear and equipment to take that 500-yard shot. But is the bite worth the squeeze?
Right.
Like administratively.
And the one I give people is you're on an overpass for whatever reason. You're chasing a car. He bailed out 600 yards down the freeway, and you have a clear, unobstructed view of the individual with nothing but the upslope grass or gravel where we live of the freeway behind him. And he is out of his vehicle with an AK, and he's at the door of someone else's car, and he starts firing the rifle into the car. Is that, if you engaged him, would that be a lawful, justifiable use of force? See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's no ID that needs to go past that. Like, everybody brings up PID as to like, well, I want to know if that a gun or a cell phone is hand. Well, what's he doing with it? Is he firing it? It's a gun. Is he holding it? Well, let's observe and find out, right? So my question, and I ask these questions to hopefully get people thinking, because they'll say, well, observation, I want to be able to ID things. And I'll be like, here's a nice pair of Swaro binos that are cheaper than an entire gun with glass on it. But guys don't want to hear that, right? Here's a really nice set of binos. You want to observe shit, look through these things.
I think I messaged that to you.
Yeah.
I was like, if it's an observation issue, I mean, I'll take my best patrol guy all day long, and I'll just get on glass. Yeah. Like, he can take the shot, and I'll walk him in. Like, we're done.
So that's the question I ask guys. I'm like, if PID is the argument, right? If actual PID at distance, I'm talking distance, if PID is the argument at distance for someone you can't shoot because they're not actively creating violence, and you want to ID what they're doing, a set of binos is going to do a better job than anything. If they're actively engaged in violence, there ain't a whole lot of IDing that needs to be done, right? You know that's your guy. You know he's shooting at him. He bails out and he's 300 yards across from the school, and you see him and he's running with a rifle, and you're like, that's a guy with a rifle running at the school. He already shot at us over here. Can you engage that guy? The answer is yes, right? There's not much ID that goes beyond it. When we get into the observation part, this is where, and this isn't an argument for or against magnification, because that's just a factor, right?
Yeah.
So magnification has huge benefits, right? And I think it has benefits at 30 yards. So if someone's in a car, or they open the front door of the house, and here in Arizona, and the sun is blasting out on the south side of the house, and the house is white, you can open up the front door and not seeing it at 20 yards, right? 15 yards. You can't see shit that's going on there. But across the street with magnification, you can zoom in and now get a better picture of what's going on. I'm sure you guys have observed the same stuff, right?
Yeah, there's a 12-year-old alive in the city that I police because a patrol cop had a Steiner 1-4, right? So we get there's a kid walking to the elementary school with a rifle, right? Like this was pre-Uvalde, but it was the same thing. And they show up and they find him. There he is. He's across the football field. Nothing but air and opportunity between you. Clean backstop, but demeanor wasn't there. And so on 4X, he could tell it was a pellet gun, right? So like he saved that kid's life with magnification. And we're not talking about like DM distance. We're talking about patrol rifle distance.
Yeah. Oh, 100 yards, 50 yards.
The benefit is there.
But the benefit is truly there, right? So this isn't an argument for or against it. It's a tool. And understanding when to use that tool, when to use magnification, I think would be a huge part of a DM program. Like you're spending a day on that, right? Like you need to spend time on when should you actually use magnification. It's been my experience. We allow LPVOs on patrol rifles. They do a great job with it, but the people who had the program ahead of us, I think, did our people a disservice. They treated them like, just put it on there, don't worry about it. Yeah, you got to make sure your backup irons are under there, so it's way too far forward and all this BS. But we're trying to teach it because we would get them. We would shoot a qual. We'd start at 50, and these guys were dumping it to 6X. I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, why? It's right there. You already could see the target. We're not identifying shit. You just need to hit that circle, and the guy next to you with the freaking aim point is shooting a better group than you. Why are you zooming in mag power when you're that close? Now, if we were to take two white hardcovers, like our walls, and put them and split the target about 10 yards from it and let the sun blast on them, you can't really see through that. If I made like a little 4-inch gap, And the guy with the LPVO at that point would go and zoom in like we talked about and be like, oh, I can see my target beyond this. Just like you were saying with vegetation, anything that pushing to it, right, making it look like you're getting closer to it actually allows you to see through it is an advantage, right? And that's where I want guys to get off the observation role. If you want to observe, you're going to get a set of binos. Like they're going to argue. If you try to push that in some chief's face, he's going to hand you a set of binos and go, there you go, observe all you want. You're not going to get what you want. You have to explain, be mature, and actually go through and say, hey, this is when I would use this in these situations, and this is how it's going to be a benefit that we do not have if we don't have magnification. If a guy's in a car at 47 yards, right, and the windows are tinted, all you can see when the sun's on it is a black window. But if you zoom in, now you can actually see inside the car, just pushing into that light barrier a little bit.
Yeah, if you're wanting to, go ahead.
No,
If you're wanting to
just don't.
sell a program, like, man, you can set this stuff up on the range, right? Like, have a guy walk around the range with a backpack with a fake gun and a cell phone, and just let him stop and then look, and then ask, like, can you tell what he's holding? Yes or no? And like with magnification, you can, and it's not about long range. Like, you can set this stuff up if you want to sell a program, like what you're talking about, looking into houses, looking into cars, identifying stuff in hands. You can set all that stuff up on the range, and you don't need more than 100 yards to do it.
No, and it's important to show them that that's where your mind is. This is why we're asking for this. Here's the advantage we're going to give to you, right? Okay, I didn't see it that way. I thought you guys wanted to shoot people at 800 yards. No, we can do that, right? We're not, but this is the way I look at it. So why isn't all that training just part of a basic patrol rifle program? Why aren't we exposing people to that? This is when you should, this is when you shouldn't. Here's an advantage of this. Here's positional work. This is why this is stable, this isn't. Why isn't all the things we're saying a DM should be what a patrol rifle officer is at a basic level?
Well, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing across the nation. Like, are we preparing for all these fantasy what ifs with gear and a 3-day course, or are we actually training for reality? And, it keeps coming up. Every course description is, bridging the gap between patrol and SWAT, bridging the gap. I mean, I know a group of guys here in New Jersey, RTG, like, they're bridging the gap between patrol and SWAT by giving patrol guys good training, so I don't know. I can't say that I'm against the DM program, but I guess with the definition that we've kind of clarified, I saw it pop up here. Wait, 5.56 isn't lethal past 300. Like, yeah, of course it's lethal, but like, we're dealing with patrol guys that struggle at qualifying at 100 in the prone, and we're talking about picking 3 or 4 of these guys that are really good, and then slapping LPVOs on their 3-minute rifle and sending them off to DM school. I don't think that what you're getting back, that expectation, is not the reality that you're going to get back from that. So
I want to hit something that
back into the training, the gear. Like, what are you really expecting out of this? And that's the topic of discussion. Like,
yeah,
what do these guys really need, capability-wise and gear-wise, to accomplish precision fire? Whether it's that 30-yard shot through the eye or that 300-yard shot. Like, we're talking about precision fire.
So I want to hit something that I think it's Fred County Coot put in here. And that's what we're saying. He said, you don't want to identify things pointing your rifle at it. It's a fundamental firearms rule. And I'd agree with you. So that's part of more of the things that a program needs. You don't just go, I need a gun with an optic on it so I can point it at everything in the Walmart parking lot looking for our guy. That's wrong. I also need observation tools. If I'm going to set up, all our snipers have spotting scopes, laser rangefinders, binos, the tripods, they have all this stuff. So the more you ask for a DM program, the more you're asking for more snipers.
Yep.
Is the way they'll view it, right? And it has to be accepted that way. Like, yeah, basically we are. We're trying to get guys at a level where they're not going to be doing Overwatch at the football game, pointing, sitting up at the place when the president comes into town, overwatching things. But we want to have all of these tools available for them so that they truly are this bridge in the gap. And if that means we need more people to go to a school, maybe we just get them in with our snipers and bring them up, right? Start elevating them and giving them more responsibility, how to take care of this. Is that unreasonable to ask? Like, do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, a DM program isn't just a rifle and a scope. It's a lot of other stuff
Yeah.
to truly do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
It could
Yeah.
almost it could
Go
almost be with all that talk about it. I mean, snipers we try to deploy in pairs, right? Primary and a secondary. Secondary is not necessarily on a gun sometimes, right? So, you know, again, going back to the program question, it might be they deploy in a pair and one guy's observation and the other person's on the gun. Because we do have to be considerate of all those things like you guys are talking about. And so then it's more equipment, right? More training and going into that stuff with it that, hey, maybe they do need to deploy in a pair. I don't know, unless, there could always be a scenario where they wouldn't wait to deploy in a pair. But there's a lot more to it, obviously, than what meets the eye.
Yeah,
Eric, you
I
got
think
something?
I was waiting for that gear to come up. Specifically the tripod. Like, I'll put my LPV away, and I will take my red dot with my tripod all day long over my LPVO with no tripod. And I think anyone that's done tripod work or responded as a police sniper or responded as a marksman, anything that needed to have that capability would probably agree. Like, I'd rather be 100 yards away with my red dot and my tripod as a rear rest off the hood of a car, nice and stable, built position. I can sit there all day long. I'll take that over my LPVO at 3 power, like trying to get a stable shot. It's just not,
There's a lot more
the
that goes into
unconventional.
getting good with a gun, but Eric, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what you were talking about, I think that would be an excellent use for an agency that already has a full-time team, right? To bring on some part-time guys to augment their snipers, right? So like we have this bigger event, or we're not able to fill this role completely. So we have a team of people that we can pull from, right? So like these patrol guys come off, but you have this mentor that has brought you up to that level rather than you just trying to figure it all out after you went to a class. And I think that kind of goes back to what are you trying to accomplish? Are you talking about cops being 400-yard lethal and providing overwatch, for when the president comes to
Yep.
town?
It gets
Or
muddy.
are you saying I want my patrol people to be able to make hits on partial targets within 200 yards and make high risk shots within 100 yards? Because those are two different conversations. You can bring that patrol guy up to number 2.
So you're tracking right along with where I'm trying to lead us down. And that's why I asked those two separate questions at the beginning. What is a military squad designated marksman? What is a LE designated marksman, right? The better we can define it, the better we know what to ask guys, what equipment to get them, what levels to expect from them. And you're getting closer to what I think makes sense, right? Well, I got to know how to gauge stuff at 600. That's all bonus material. You can go shoot matches. I got one on Saturday. It's going to be a blast. As soon as I get done with this, I'm registering for it.
And so with that, you need that personal drive. So a lot of these guys that are probably putting out like, hey, I want a DM program. You want the DM program because you want to call yourself a DM and you want a patch? Go try out for SWAT, get on the snipers, like, let's go. If you want a DM program, you have the heart to learn all the ballistics and the gear and shoot and everything. Do you have guys below you or with you that are in line with you to carry on that program?
Yeah, that's the sustainability part we talked about. So one of the things that, God dang it, my head just skipped what I wanted to ask you guys was, I think everything we're asking, oh, here it is. I think everything we're asking is what a basic patrol rifle program should include in it. Like, all of these things should be included. Now, I know the expectations and the standards are going to be hard to meet, but the problem we get into when we over specialize, when we create another specialized ability and thing, is now we're waiting on them to show up, right? Because the original argument of DM I heard was, well, it bridges the gap between patrol and SWAT. And then the SWAT gets there, then they're going to relieve them and do whatever. But now our guys going to be sitting around, patrol rifle officers, they're going to be sitting around waiting. We got to wait for a DM to show up. And now no one's doing anything. So like, the more we take this information and stop specializing it and just saying, hey, this is what I expect you to be able to do with this piece of equipment I've given you. Here's its maximum effective range. How do you determine that? Like, we determined ours by our bullet design. Once it goes below 1,800 feet per second, will not perform reliably as it's designed to do past or under 1,800 feet per second. So we're right at about 300, 350 yards. That's what that bullet is designed to perform in a certain way in its testing, right? Now, it's perfectly lethal and perfectly dangerous out past that, and nobody wants to stand in front of it. But it's not going to behave as designed, right? So is it unrealistic for me to say every person that I issue this rifle to needs to be able to hit a 2-inch or a 4-inch circle on command at 50 yards? Whatever the numbers you need to make up, like, you have to be able to do this, you have to be able to do this. These are from supported, ready positions. I don't expect someone to run 100 yards, slam to a halt, and go offhand and hit a 2-inch circle at 50 yards. I think now we're getting in the weeds of silliness, right? Like, what's reasonable to expect them to be able to accomplish? And then how much are we pushing training that if you're standing 4 feet away from a tree and you don't use it as support, you're probably wrong, right? Why wouldn't you go up and brace off of that to give yourself a better shot? Like, just that overall thinking of all the better things, things we've learned through our time. Why aren't we making that just the basics of patrol? And what I hear a lot is guys are like, and I laugh because guys are like, you don't understand. Most cops can't shoot. I'm like, dude, I work at a range. I work at an academy. I've seen the silliness. But the more you push their standards and the more you push the expectations, I think you guys have seen it. You'd be surprised at how many of them will go up and meet it. Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, within reason, right? What's the bar for entry? Let me see. We already covered the gear part. Glass and gun are not the answer solely by themselves, right? What do you guys have as far as thoughts on LE? Because Eric, I think you nailed it. You started defining it even more. Like, this is what I need someone to be able to do to give them this, level. And maybe it's just levels of patrol rifle, right? You qualified at this level. Nobody wants to be a 2. I want to be a number 1. Well, you aren't good enough to be a number 1. And sometimes we have to tell people that, right? But does that limit anyone else's ability to engage in those? Because we don't have a set standard, but we've had patrol officers make literal hostage headshots at 47 yards and engage people over 250. So, like, how do you, what is the look of it? How do you go about doing it? Or what are your guys' thoughts in general, I should say?
What do you mean by what is the look of it?
What is the look at,
like gear wise?
No, I'm sorry. Like, just basic patrol rifle, that's hard enough to keep up, I think, in a lot of agencies. The actual training that's required and the ammo and all that at that level. If we stop focusing it where we're at and we start elevating it with the same amount of time, same amount of ammo you have, but start pushing the expectations higher, it's not an extra cost. It's not an extra cost in time or money. You're just elevating a standard real quick. And do you think you could take most LE patrol rifle and get them up probably 3 notches where they could do that?
Yeah,
like you explained, Eric.
Yeah, so Ridgeline, their recommended baseline was a 90 on a B8 at 100 yards, and it wasn't any crazy wall course. It was just like, look, just shoot it. Like, if you can shoot 90, so like, can you hit a 6-inch circle every time at 100 yards? And when you can do that, you're a candidate for further training. And so the Ridgeline guys are pretty sharp. I would use that as a baseline. 6 inches, you're talking about hitting a partial target.
Yeah.
Can you hit a piece of someone at 100 yards? And then that's cranial vault inside 50, right? So if you can do that, and I think that the way to level it up to make people motivated would be to offer the extra training for everyone who can meet this standard. And I think your range is going to fill up with people showing up to practice. If you say, hey, everybody that can do this thing goes on to level 2, people will start showing up to be able to do the thing.
I give them like a hat, Ultra Shooter 5000 or something. You get like a silver hat. You start putting patches on it and wings. But I think that might be the key, right? Like, here's the baseline standard. And when we changed our rifle qual, amazingly, all sorts of people started showing up to practice because they're like, this shit's harder. Yeah, it's not hard. but it was harder than what they were used to. And people started, I got to practice. I got to get in here and train. And then all of a sudden now everybody's just cruising. It's not a sweat. It's no big deal. And training is getting pushed further and further. But I like little things like that. And I think some people, the guy who isn't driven by the cookie, right? Like, I'll give you my special hat. You can be patrol rifle level 2. If the guy's like, I don't give a shit about that, we got nothing for that guy anyway. Like, you're not gonna help him.
Well, and that guy's going to be driving around the block when the stuff happens
Yeah.
anyway. Like it really doesn't
Nope.
matter. That guy's a non-issue
They
in my
don't
book.
care until they're put in a situation where they needed it, and then they care a lot.
But we've had enough across this country. We've had enough failures. We've had enough, like, just blasto 5,000, everybody shooting. That I think that's the kind of point I wanted to make with this. Is I don't think we need a title of designated marksman, and we don't need to go off into the weeds. But guys are asking for these things without being able to identify and say, this is what I want to be able to do. I've got a group of 6 of us. We can all do it. I can increase our effectiveness and decrease our liability by allowing just 2 guys to deploy here and taking everybody else off lethal coverage and having them do other stuff. And that's one of the biggest problems with cops. Everybody wants to point guns at the house until it's time to actually shoot them, and then they're just making noise with freaking classic Jesus.
I think having the separate, looking at it from our agency and kind of where our program sits and where it can go. I'm in this weird position now because I'm in between like full-time SWAT and starting to be a supervisor. So just like you said, the guys that are going to show up to the hot call first, they're going to be those guys that I want in that position. The guy that shows up and has the less lethal, if he shows up first, like, I should know as a supervisor that guy's going to make good decisions and use the tool appropriately. I could see having like a separate program, and then when a supervisor is involved, having to make decisions at the patrol level. Well, wait, you with a red dot cannot make this shot because we need a DM for this.
Yeah,
The DM has to show up to solve this problem, even though your guy with a red dot, he might be doing his own training, investing in himself, and might be the better shooter than the DM guy who shows up, right? And obviously, if someone's life is on the line, we can't wait for. We might have to take action now. It's the old thing of like, hey, patrol can't do hostage rescues, right? Patrol can't. Patrol does it. Patrol does it more than our team does, right? They're doing it more, and people don't want to face that reality sometimes. So it's like, why are we not investing in them? Because it's still an hour for us to show up. If we're working or I'm on my way home, I can get there in 20, 30 minutes. But if we're at home and you push the button, it's an hour to get everybody there, So I kind of am conflicted on making it its own separate thing versus just making the program as it sits now better. Because then, like you said, right, we got to justify it up the chain of command, and then it has to be disseminated out to the patrol sergeants. And the patrol sergeants already have an idea of who their good shooters are.
as they should, yeah.
Their go-to people, right? They should know that stuff. They should have that knowledge. They should know those things if they show up to a hot call and the guy who's not having the best time, or they got a memo from the range, hey, this guy barely passed his qual, but you've got the other guy that's there, we should be switching them, right? It's nothing personal. We have to perform at that moment. So I think for me, it would be along the lines of, let's make the program better. And if there's guys that want to go to that next level, it exists within the program, but we're not creating something separate, because at least for our agency, it would just cause more problems deciding when or when not to use it.
Yeah.
So, Chris, I think that's somewhere where the designated marksman, like designated marksman is a thing, and it has a definition, right? And I think that is holding a lot of programs
Agreed.
back, because you got some patrol guys from small agencies. They don't have SWAT, they don't have snipers, and they're trying to make this giant leap. You go to your county commissioners and say, hey, the sheriff's office needs snipers. Well, you're not getting them. That's not going to happen. But if you were to say, instead of designated marksman, a patrol marksman program, and all we're doing is we're taking our patrol guys and we're going to make our patrol guys more effective. And look at, like, you can just look at the problems that patrol has faced within your agency, replicate them on the range, and then demonstrate how magnification or enhanced accuracy would have made that problem easier to solve.
Yep.
I,
And
I
just
think
like you said,
that the verbiage is
it,
hurting us.
it is, and I hate, and I know
Yep.
guys get upset with all this lefty stuff. Guys, we're trying to teach, like trying to explain that sometimes you use these lefty liberal words and you do play word games as a weapon. You need to learn how to speak that makes them feel comfortable
Yep.
when you're telling them this. I need death ray snipers. They're not going to like that at all,
And
right? What I need to do is I need police marksmen. I need people that way I can only have 2 guys shooting at the door when he comes out
Yep.
with an Uzi instead of 20, right? This looks worse. If I can have precise, effective fire, it will be over sooner with less rounds fired and far less misses. And that's a big thing that we need to get, you need to give them that comfort. Like if you allow us to do it this way and push these standards, we're going to miss less, we're going to be more effective, and we're going to be very judicious with use of force because we're going to have positively identified exactly what our parameters are and what we're going to allow this guy to do. Where we don't have one guy that's too close, get scared over here and start shooting. These guys know their job is to cover a certain sector. If he comes outside, and it can be set up ahead of time, hey, he's allowed out front, he is not allowed in that car. All right. If he tries to get into that car with a weapon or with the victim, just like we would do on a SWAT team. There's left and right lateral limits every bad guy gets. And then it's up to us as individuals to be mature enough to read the demeanor, read the way they're acting, and then make those decisions if you're going to preemptively use force specifically, right? That preemptive use of force is very different than the active violence going on because everybody gets that one. They're like, oh, that makes sense, right? But having a guy on glass at 100 yards, 47 yards, if he sees something through a window and he has a shot, he knows he can make it, and he chooses to engage, that's up to that individual to go on. But that maturity, that training, all the stuff that actually goes into making a decision to use force has to be part of the training. And even at a basic patrol rifle level, you can't just be like, go forth with, your criminal code from your state and God bless you if you make the wrong decision. Like you have to really hammer it into their head as to when, why, how, where should you deploy, all of that stuff. What else you guys got? I ramble a lot. Anybody got any questions or anything?
What is it for you other guys, and then even for you, Chris? Like, if we could have it that way and we could put it together, like, what would that program look like? I think for us, it'd probably be 2 weeks, 80 hours, 40 hours of it is our basic patrol rifle at this point, and then to kind of hit. I'm kind of building in my head what those topics would look like, those other things, observation, decision making, other things like that would go into it. And I'm kind of at like, I think it'd be about 80 hours. So what do you guys think that would look like if you were king for a day and you could have it your way?
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I think 80 would be a good baseline. So our patrol rifle course is 40.
Same.
And then 40 on top of that, I think would give you what you need. I think that's a big ask for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think you can level up guys in 2 days. So if you got people that are already patrol rifle handlers, you can give them magnification and level them up to where they're at least they're not being harmful with the magnification, right? They're an asset within a couple of days. So I would start with that. I would say, hey, we want to level up our patrol guys and ask for 2 days. Then from there, I would go to 40 hours with ongoing training. Like I said, 16 a month. This is all imaginary for me. Like SWAT would do all of this for us, right? Mm-hmm. So like the red shirts wouldn't have a handle on it. SWAT would just absorb these people into their reserve is what it would look like for an agency our size.
So
for a day.
For me,
yep.
I'm not going to have any hours on it. I don't know if 40 hours is good, 5 hours is good, 80 hours is good. I don't know that guy's prior experience or no experience at all. So that sounds like some supervisor shit. Not a supervisor. So yeah, that's state level hours crap I don't agree with. What I am going to have is I'm going to have principles, and you're either going to meet my expectations, or you might not leave with a cert. And find me a law enforcement class that you don't leave with a cert. Good. Because there's not a lot there's not a lot of them. You know what I mean? It's like 3-day LPVO class. You go, 5-day, you're an instructor. Like, what do we
Yeah, so
actually found, dude? Like,
we spend
you
40
send me
hours.
you send me any LPVO instructor, and I'm gonna ask them, what's your gun speed? I tell you, mine's 2.5 mile an hour. 2.5 mile an hour is .1 per 100, right? I know exactly my wind call. None of those dudes are walking away with that
No,
course from
yeah,
that.
now we're getting, yeah, now like
But
that's all stuff I've learned. Like I have a
you're
3.7
making
mile
it
an hour gun, but yeah,
exactly. So you know. But now you're saying, like, okay, you want that guy to go out there, whether it's, a 75-yard shot where they have to build a position, be stable, and it's a low percentage shot, or the 600-yard shot. Those are both low percentage shots. Not only does their gear have the capability, but do they? So, like, I want to raise the standard in my rifle program. It's not going to be just the gear. It's going to be that actual knowledge and those principles. And I'm going to teach that stuff. And I want those guys to actually grasp it. And if you don't grasp it, bye. You're just not
yep,
it, you know?
yeah. We spend 40 hours just on our less lethal. So we add that up, 40 hours on less lethal. The first day is just the system. This is how this works. You're qualled on it. Easy. And then 3 days of this is how we need you to use it. And we tell them in the very beginning, this is a school. It is not a fucking seminar. So you can graduate it or not. But if we've identified you by day 2 or 3, so you're not meeting our standards, we have remedial work that we're going to put them through, and then we'll dismiss them after that. And then we have people come up to go, this isn't for me, and they just leave.
Yeah.
Which that has to be the way we do stuff in LE. Like it cannot be a gimme, because then the guys who can excel and really will learn aren't going to be getting what they need out of it. You're just holding them all back.
Yeah, well, I think that's how we start is we level up our prerequisites and our requirements for the course and make sure that guys are actually held accountable to those. So, and I think then you'll put out a product to raise those programs up to a level that we can talk, DM.
Yeah. And I encourage every cop out there, if like Ridgeline, all these guys that are doing scope carbine classes, I absolutely support them. Go learn what that gun can do with you attached to it in different positions, how you actually use whatever reticle you bought, how the thing works. Take that information back. Now you're just a more capable shooter. It still doesn't change anything about how you're going to deploy with it, communicate with it, and use it as a police officer. Like it's just you learning to be a better shooter. You can also get the same thing by shooting matches with good people. Like go shoot accurized AR matches, QP, go shoot that stuff. You're going to learn a ton about what you can actually do with the rifle. Because guys will say it all the time, right? This is a sub-minute gun. I'm like, not what you fucking attached to it. It ain't. I've seen enough of that. But
But
it's
then
going to cut us off here in a minute.
I said you're going to look at that personal requirement again, though.
Yep.
Like they have to have that in them to go shoot that. Like I got a PRS match this coming Sunday. Like these dudes, I'm the only guy at 120 guys that goes and shoots competition. They're not open to it. They don't want their ego challenged. They don't want to fail.
But as long as some of us are going, you know what, fuck it, I want to be good at this shit. Eric beat my ass in Texas.
Nice.
And then they made him do freaking
just
squats and stuff. It was weird.
It's those SWAT guys, man.
I know.
You get a SWAT guy out there, all of a sudden burpees are involved.
He's like, all right, we're going to do a billion burpees. I'm like, what does this have to do with magnification? But whatever.
Yeah.
So I will post this. One of the guys asked us to do that. Guys, I really appreciate you coming on. We kind of wandered off to the end there, but I think we did. I hope I hope people watch this and go, maybe I should start asking these questions and not being like, and I'm not picking on you, but don't be a 4-year-old having a fucking temper tantrum because you're not getting what you want. Go with a solution and actually be like, here's what it's going to look like. And this is why it's beneficial to the department. And when they ask you how much it's going to cost, if you don't have an answer, they will laugh you right out of the room. They don't have time for you. If you can't tell them what it's going to look like, how much it's going to cost, and what you're going to do to keep it going over 5 years, 10 years, even starting a pilot program, it's going to cost me this much. I want to do it for this long. Here's what I'm going to get you out of it. And in the end, we'll be able to give you these results. If you can't tell them that, they're not going to listen to you. You guys have anything to finish up before we wrap it up? Eric, starting here? Yeah. Or go ahead.
Just those guys that are looking to start those programs, go to your local snipers. Go to their training. Go see. Get their opinions. They're the ones you're going to be working with.
Yep. Eric?
Yeah, I think I'd like to have more conversations about patrol. Like we're leveling up patrol and what guys can do without developing a new program.
Yes.
Like what does that look like? What can we do right now? Um, I think that'd be a good conversation to have.
Maybe we'll have it again.
Yeah.
Matt?
Everything those guys said, put the ego aside, reach out to your local agencies, build partnerships with them, go train with them, go see what ideas they have. Um, that's that's it right there. The more that we can elevate all the agencies around us, you guys want to talk about raising standards. If we start doing it together at every agency, that's how it gets done. And go shoot matches too.
Yes.
So all of those things, lots to do, but it's worth it.
Go
Awesome.
fail.
All right, guys, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for those that tuned in, and I will post this. Feel free to comment all you like. Bye, guys.
Later.